Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Metzler, one of the programmers here with the Green Film Festival of San Francisco, presented by SF Indie Fest. Thanks again for being here. It's still this kind of weird world we live. We're kind of doing some things in this kind of virtual environment, but we see so many great films from around the world that we're kind of excited to bring them to you. And with it, you've just had a chance to see this great documentary, Broken Wings. And we're lucky enough to have a filmmaker, Jonathan Sutek, here. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to have had the opportunity to screen for this festival and for everyone who's watching online.
Yeah, most definitely. So, I think maybe a good place to start is like, how did you kind of first hear about this story of Adonis, and what made you know that there was kind of a film to be made?
Well, I was on like the early stage of the festival circuit for my last film, Dawns of Disco, and I had just premiered that film in Rome, Italy, and then flew from there to Hot Springs, Arkansas, where the US premiere was going to be held at the Hot Springs Documentary Film Festival. So I was there and I had breakfast across the street from the hotel where I was staying. And Janie was actually my waitress. And she was just this very kind woman who was very open about her life and started talking about the fact that she'd been feeding a one-winged vulture named Adonis for the past decade. And since I was already kind of in like doc mindset and I had a camera with me, I followed her around a little bit and met her and got to know her, and we just really hit it off.
That's very cool. And something that maybe the audience might appreciate is that it's amazing the number of documentaries that start because a filmmakers on the circuit of going to different film festivals and wind up in places that they didn't expect and run across cool stories.
Totally. They really just kind of fall in your lap. In fact, like just a little anecdote, like on Saturday, you might have seen the story. There was like a Tesla that like jumped over a hill in Echo Park, where I live in Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
And the headlight, it crashed and the headlight landed on my doorstep. And I'm now making a film about one of the people impacted from that. So it's like literally they just like fall on your doorstep.
Now that's real serendipity.
Yeah.
What was it, the kind of the aspect of the story that kind of most engaged? Was it the situation of like kind of the kind of human animal relationship, or was it her personality? Like, what was it that kind of made you decide that you wanted to pick up the camera?
Well, I didn't have a preconceived sense of the entire film when I started shooting. I just knew that like Janie was this incredible woman who I wanted to be close to, whether I'm making a film or not. So that drew me. And just, I had just come off making a film about like public figures, and I really felt I wanted to just capture an ordinary person, a woman who works as a waitress, who has this kind of secret life where she feeds a bird and has this really interesting relationship with her roommate. And I just wanted to dedicate my time to tell a story about just an everyday woman and see how that unfolds.
Well, and when you first kind of approached about kind of like filming or kind of creating the story, did she feel okay about that? I mean, or was she kind of excited to kind of share this this kind of hidden part of her life, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, when I first spoke to her, we had that kind of conversation about like, how do you feel about being the subject of a film? How do you feel about this story potentially becoming more public? Are you worried about people finding out where Adonis is and like things like that? Because that was the level of understanding that I had about her life in the film. But as like the onion unpeeled, we would just have more and more conversations about like, are you comfortable with this? How do you feel about details from your personal life making their way into this film? So it was just kind of like an evolving process.
Cool. And while we're kind of this kind of environmental and green film festival, we have kind of our own kind of independent film roots. And so I was just kind of curious, like, as you were kind of making the film, did you run into like other people who kind of shared their own stories, not even in the film, but just about like taking care of animals and things like that? Is like, I mean, I imagine this can be kind of like, when you tell people that you were working on this film, did it kind of elicit a lot of people kind of confessionals of like their own things that they've done with different animals that they've run across?
Yeah, totally. And there's a lot of stuff that I wish I could have included in the film. Like I was interviewing someone in Hot Springs who's friends with Janie in their home, and she took out this turtle that she found who was hurt and was rehabilitating in her apartment. And just little things like that would come up because people, a lot of people feel a real connection to animals, and in particular, like wounded animals or animals that, can't really serve their function in the ecosystem, and they feel really inspired by this story and want to share their own situations.
And as a filmmaker, how did you kind of decide what the kind of aesthetic or approach to the film is? I mean, you kind of contrasted this, with your previous film, which is great, The Dawns of Disco, in the sense of like, was there a way that you wanted to kind of create that intimacy, or kind of like ways that you kind of captured the story to kind of this kind of more kind of smaller story that you were working on and kind of at a micro level?
Yeah, I mean, my sensibility is verite, and I try to just be a fly on the wall. Sometimes that's hard with Janie because she wants to talk to me, and she wants to really engage with me because, like, I'm filming it, but I'm also hanging out with her. So there's always that kind of line blurred. But I think with this film, my intent was to make it more verite, but as it started to get tighter and the editing process went along, it started to kind of be a hybrid of, like, there's a lot of archival of like Adonis when he was younger and old cell phone videos, but then also incorporating just scenes of maybe Janie and her roommate Anne in their apartment and her feeding Adonis, so it's kind of stylistically a bit of a melange.
And so, since you've wrapped the film, what's kind of happened, and have you had a chance to screen it in Arkansas, and what was the kind of reaction?
Yeah, I'm so lucky. So the film premiered at the Hot Springs Documentary Film Festival, like in the middle of COVID. So this was one of the first festivals that like allowed a public screening. And I was so happy that like Janie got to have that experience of screening this film in front of her friends, her community. I got to fly in, and it was just beautiful. And now it's playing more festivals. I'm about to have a kid, so I can't leave my home. So I'm not going to any of them. So I'm really grateful that I got to have that. Thank you. So I got to have that one experience with Janie at a public screening, and she was at a screening last night in Texas. So she's texting me about it. So she's now kind of like representing the film, which is so fun to hear her perspective on like the festival circuit.
And did you ever ask her in the sense of like, do you think that she would ever do this with another animal, or is there something specifically about that relationship with Adonis that was kind of unique that for her?
I think it's less about Adonis and more about Janie. I think that she comes across someone who's having a hard time, and her first instinct is like, how can I help? And even if it's not totally equipped to help, she'll still just kind of plunge 100% in. And you can see that with her relationship with her roommate Anne, and even her cat Einstein, who passed away. She's since taken in another cat who she's taken care of. So she's constantly on the lookout for someone to heal.
As is so why so appropriate the title of the film.
Exactly.
Well, cool. Well, thanks again for sharing the film with us, Jonathan. One of the things I always kind of try to remind our audience here is that we're so lucky that we have filmmakers that are willing to share their films with us. And so, part of that kind of bargain is that, we in the audience, it's like we're supposed to kind of be the kind of the grassroots team to kind of help spread the word about the film. What's the best way that folks can kind of continue to follow the film and also kind of spread the word when the film hits their community?
Well, unfortunately, I'm terrible at social media and advertising my small documentary films. But fortunately, this film will be available on PBS on May 16th. So that's going to be just free if you have the PBS video app, and it'll be on all of like kind of like the regional PBS stations, PBS World. It's kind of hard to understand just because it's like all over the place with like regional times and whatnot. But May 16th, you can watch it if you want. So spread the word if you like it. Thanks.
Very cool. So yeah, folks, after here and you finish watching the Q&A, just kind of let folks know you saw this great film, Broken Wings, as part of the Green Film Festival, San Francisco, and that Jonathan's a great guy. And thanks again for making this really special film.
Thanks so much.